Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Elliot was sitting on the couch, holding a bowl of popcorn that now seemed forgotten on his lap. Claire was next to him, legs crossed, her eyes on the TV screen but clearly not paying much attention to the movie they had chosen for the night. The laughter they had shared just a few minutes earlier began to fade as the movie's plot lost momentum, making room for casual conversation. It was the kind of evening they both usually enjoyed, no rush, no elaborate plans, just the two of them. However, Claire broke the silence in a way Elliot hadn't expected. Have you ever thought about what it would be like, to be with other people? Like a threesome or even a foursome, swapping partners? I'm not saying I want that, it's just a funny thought, don't you think? She laughed softly as she said it, trying to sound light-hearted, as if it were just another random observation in a trivial conversation. Elliot, still with his hand in the bowl of popcorn, looked at her with a curious expression. He tried to laugh, but he was caught off guard. It wasn't the kind of thing Claire usually said. Well, I guess everyone's had a fantasy or two, right? Elliot replied, trying to match her casual tone. But as their conversation shifted to some other topic, that sentence kept echoing in his mind. He'd known Claire for almost a decade and knew how she thought, but this felt out of the ordinary. It was said in a light tone, yet it carried a weight he couldn't ignore. The idea of Claire considering something like that, even as a joke, cast a shadow on what he had believed to be a solid relationship. As the movie went on, Elliot kept staring at the screen, but the characters' lines were drowned out by his own thoughts. Was Claire really satisfied with their marriage? Or was it just a random thought, sparked by boredom? He knew he had no real reason to doubt her, she had always been a loyal partner, someone he could count on. But at the same time, the unexpected nature of her comment made him wonder if there was something he wasn't seeing. When the movie ended and Claire turned off the TV, she got up, saying she was tired and heading to bed. Elliot stayed on the couch for a few more minutes, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of his thoughts. He knew he needed to understand what was behind all that, but he was also scared of the answer. Tomorrow, he told himself. I'll ask her tomorrow. As he got up to go to the bedroom, her words echoed in his mind, not so much a question but an uncomfortable reminder that maybe things weren't as simple as they seemed. Elliot turned off the lights, but the darkness brought no relief. The next morning, Elliot woke up earlier than usual. While making coffee, he was still stuck on the conversation from the night before. He knew he needed to bring it up with Claire, but he wanted to find the right tone. It was a fine line, he didn't want to sound defensive or accusing, but he couldn't just ignore the matter. He watched the dark liquid fill the mug, as though the answer was hidden somewhere in the rising steam. When Claire walked into the kitchen, he felt his heart tighten, but he knew there was no turning back. About what you said last night, Elliot began, his voice low, almost hesitant. Claire, who had been opening the fridge, stopped for a moment and looked at him. Her expression showed a mix of surprise and slight discomfort. What about it? She tried to sound casual, but the slight tremor in her voice gave her away. Elliot took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. I've been thinking. Was it just a joke or, do you really feel like something's missing between us? He fixed his gaze on her, waiting for a reaction that might give him more clues than her words alone could. Claire closed the fridge door and leaned against the counter. It was as if she was carefully calculating every word. Elliot, look, it just slipped out. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. But, now that we're talking about it, maybe it's a sign we should talk about us. She folded her arms, more for protection than out of confidence. Don't get me wrong, I love what we have, but sometimes. I don't know, I feel like we're stuck in a routine. It's not about you or even about us exactly. It's about me. He was quiet for a few seconds, taking in her words. Claire rarely talked about herself like this. She was practical, the kind of person who tackled problems head-on. But here she was, showing a vulnerability he hadn't expected. "You feel unsatisfied?" Elliot asked, his voice more solid now, but still gentle. "I wouldn't say unsatisfied, it's more like I've lost some of the excitement. That spark, you know? I don't really know how to explain, but it's not something I want to change in any extreme way. I don't want to break your trust, I don't want to hurt you, but sometimes these fantasies pop up in my mind. Not because I want to act on them, but because they're a way of escaping the monotony." Elliot felt a weight in his chest, but also a slight sense of relief. It was hard to hear, but at least now he knew she wasn't hiding it from him, she was trying to be honest. "I understand," he said, even surprising himself. "I think all of us, at some point, feel like something might be missing. What if it were the other way around? If I had these same fantasies, how would you feel?" Claire hesitated for a moment, but her answer was sincere. "I think I'd feel insecure, honestly. But I also think it would be better if you told me rather than hid it. I don't know, Elliot, it's confusing. I just wanted to be open about it because you're the person I trust most in the world." He nodded, more with his eyes than an actual head gesture. No matter how hard it was to hear, he appreciated her honesty. Still, something in her words felt off, like she was telling the truth while still holding back. Wanting to dig deeper without pushing too hard, Elliot made a daring suggestion. "So here's what we'll do. If this is on your mind and it's affecting how you feel, why don't we explore it together? I'm not saying we should change our whole life or cross any boundaries, but maybe, face it as a team." Claire's expression changed. There was a mix of surprise and relief, but also a hint of unease. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Staying calm, Elliot answered carefully. "I want to understand you. But before anything else, I want to make sure this is going to help us reconnect. Because, Claire, you mean everything to me. And if this is between us, I'd rather face it with you than pretend it doesn't exist." When Elliot suggested inviting someone else, he chose his words carefully, watching Claire's reaction. "Maybe we should bring in someone, to break up the routine. Maybe one of your friends? Someone you trust, who would put us at ease." Claire went quiet for a few seconds, looking visibly surprised. But instead of agreeing right away, she gave a nervous laugh. "I didn't expect you to say that, Elliot. Honestly, in my mind, I was thinking the opposite. Like, inviting a man. Something completely different from what you suggested." Her remark hit Elliot in an unexpected way. He raised an eyebrow, trying to hide the discomfort he felt. "So that's something you want?" he asked, not raising his voice, but clearly interested in her response. Claire sighed, as if she'd just let go of a burden she'd been carrying for a long time. "Yes, I do. It's not something I'd do on my own, but it's a fantasy that's crossed my mind." Elliot was silent for a moment, trying to figure out how to handle this without turning it into a fight. Finally, he answered calmly, "Then let's do this. Let's start the other way around. Let's invite one of your girlfriends first, someone you trust. If it all works out, I promise we'll do what you want after that. How does that sound?" Claire's eyes lit up with excitement. She gave a wide smile, like a child getting an unexpected treat. "Yes, yes, yes. I'm in." Her excitement surprised Elliot. He wasn't sure if he should laugh or question her enthusiasm, but decided not to spoil the moment. "Okay then. Who do you have in mind?" Claire immediately grabbed her phone, thinking of someone who would understand the proposal without judging them. After a few minutes of back and forth, she decided to call Laurel, her outgoing, open-minded friend, someone who would probably get it without complicating things. "Hey, Laurel. I have something kind of unusual to ask you," and that was how the conversation started. Evening came, and there was a quiet tension in Claire and Elliot's home. Laurel, always on time, arrived right when she said she would, bringing her vibrant personality that instantly seemed to lighten the heaviness of what was about to happen. Seeing her at the door, smiling so casually, made Claire laugh nervously, trying to hide her own unease. Elliot, meanwhile, kept a calm expression, but was as anxious as his wife. Laurel walked in as if she were just visiting close friends. "So, tell me. How'd you two come up with this crazy idea?" she asked with a laugh, setting her purse on the couch and sitting down with a relaxed posture. Claire and Elliot exchanged a quick look before Claire replied, "I guess we wanted something different. Something to get us out of our rut." The sentence came out more like she was trying to convince herself than explain it to Laurel. As they talked, the tension in the room mixed with occasional laughter. Laurel had a way of making everything feel less serious than it really was, but even she understood there was more going on. They chatted about random things, but the longer pauses, the glances between Claire and Elliot, and the way Laurel watched both of them revealed the complexity of the moment. Still, she did her best to be the supportive friend Claire imagined she'd be. After a few glasses of wine, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't something anyone could pin down exactly, but they all felt it. Noticing their hesitation, Laurel decided to cut to the chase. "Look, I know this is new for you both. I just want you to know I'm here because I trust you and I want to help you figure out what you're looking for, whatever that might be. But this will only work if you two are completely comfortable. So tell me, is this really what you want?" Her question hung in the air, and Claire was the first to speak. "Yes, it's what I want." Her voice came out firm, like she was reassuring herself. Elliot, on the other hand, took a few seconds before nodding in agreement. "Yes, we're ready." But even as he said it, a wave of doubt formed inside him. It wasn't about Laurel, or even Claire, but what this all really meant for them as a couple. The next few minutes were filled with careful gestures, nervous laughter, and a joint effort to make the moment feel less awkward. Elliot watched Claire and Laurel interact, trying to read the emotions on his wife's face. Claire looked both excited and anxious, while Laurel kept up her easygoing manner, almost as if she was guiding the situation so the other two wouldn't be overwhelmed by their own discomfort. However, Elliot began noticing something he hadn't expected. While Claire seemed completely into the moment, he felt increasingly disconnected. It was as if he were just a bystander, not really part of this thing that was supposed to bring them closer. What should have been a shared experience started to feel, in his mind, like a window to something he wasn't sure he wanted to see. When the night finally ended, Laurel, always sensitive, was the first to wrap things up. "Well, I think that's enough for tonight. You two need time to figure out what this all means for you. Thanks for trusting me and letting me be here." She stood up, hugged Claire, and gave Elliot a friendly smile before leaving. Once the door was closed and the house was quiet, Claire turned to Elliot. "So, what did you think?" she asked, almost as if seeking approval. But instead of answering right away, Elliot stood there, looking at her with a mix of confusion and clarity. In that moment, he realized that Knight had answered questions he hadn't even known he needed to ask. Elliot sat on the living room couch, elbows on his knees, staring at a distant point. Claire stood a bit away from him, watching with an expression that blended anticipation and worry. The question she'd asked a moment earlier, "What did you think?" still lingered in the air, unanswered. Elliot wasn't sure where to start. The silence between them felt louder than any conversation they could have. Finally, he stood up, ran a hand through his hair, and took a deep breath before looking at her. "I don't know, Claire. To be honest, I don't know what to think." His voice was calm but filled with a sincerity that immediately put her on the defensive. "You don't know what to think? What does that mean? Wasn't it what you expected?" Elliot paced around the room, trying to make sense of the thoughts swirling in his head. He knew he had to be honest, but he also didn't want to hurt her more than necessary. "I thought it might help us reconnect, maybe bring something new into our relationship. But what I felt, wasn't what I expected. Claire crossed her arms over her chest, almost hugging herself. So, what did you feel? He stopped and looked at her. I felt like you were more excited about the idea than about me. Don't take it the wrong way, Claire. I get that you were excited, but it felt like your excitement wasn't about us. It felt like it was about something you wanted for yourself, no matter what it meant for us. His words hit Claire hard. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked away. I didn't know you felt that way. To me, it was a way to break out of the monotony. Something that could be fun for both of us. But it wasn't fun for me, Elliot said, a hint of frustration replacing the calm in his voice. I spent the whole night trying to figure out how I felt, looking for a way to connect with you. But all I saw was you engaging in the situation, like I wasn't even there. And that hurt me. Claire stayed quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted something to make us feel alive again. Elliot sighed, running a hand over his face. He understood what she was saying, but it didn't change how he felt. I get it, Claire. I get that you're looking for something. But the question is, does that something include both of us? Or are you trying to figure it out on your own? The question surprised both of them, capturing exactly what was on his mind. Claire didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at him as though searching for the right words. I want it to include both of us. I swear I do. But, maybe I didn't think about it the way you're thinking about it. Elliot nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're each dealing with different things here. And honestly, I'm not sure if it's something we can solve together. At least not right now. Claire felt a chill run through her. What are you saying? That you want to give up on us? Her voice trembled, and she seemed to be fighting back tears. Elliot hesitated before answering. He knew that whatever he said now would have a huge impact, but he also knew he couldn't keep avoiding what felt inevitable. I don't want to give up on you. But I'm not sure we can keep going like this. I need time to think, Claire. To figure out what this means for me. Because right now, I feel lost. And I think you do too. Claire stood there, unmoving, as his words echoed through the room. She wanted to shout, to argue, to say he was wrong. But deep down, she knew he was right. They were both lost, and their attempt to reconnect had only shown how far apart they really were. Silence settled in, heavy with everything left unsaid. Elliot stayed where he was, looking at Claire, but his mind was in a whirlwind. He knew there were things they still needed to resolve, but he was trying to process it all before making any decisions. It felt like their conversation had reached a breaking point, and he didn't know how, or if, he wanted to fix it. That was when Claire broke the silence, her voice firm but with a hint of urgency. Elliot, do you still plan on keeping your promise? You said that if things went okay with Laurel, we'd do it my way next. Invite a man. Her question felt like a direct hit to his chest. Elliot blinked, trying to process what he'd just heard. He locked eyes with Claire, looking for some sign that she was joking or testing his patience. But her expression was serious, determined, as if she were simply reminding him of what she believed was fair. That request, at that moment, crystallized something in his mind. He didn't recognize the woman he had spent the last 7 years of his life with. Are you serious, Claire? He asked quietly, but with a weight in his tone that was heavier than anything else he'd said that night. He took a step back, as if he needed physical distance to grasp what was happening. You really want to go through with this? After everything we just talked about? Claire looked back at him, not backing down. Elliot, you promised. You said we'd explore what each of us wanted, and I feel like this is important for me. I don't know why it's so hard for you to understand. He shook his head in disbelief. It's not about understanding, Claire. It's about what this stands for. I thought we were doing this to reconnect, to save what we have. But right now, seeing how you're insisting on this, it feels like something just for you. Like I'm not even part of the picture. Claire opened her mouth to argue, but Elliot raised a hand, asking her to stop. He needed to speak before he lost the nerve to say what he felt. This night with Laurel was enough for me to see a lot of things. The main one is that, as much as I love you, we're not the same people who began this marriage. And honestly, Claire, I think you know that too. Tears welled in Claire's eyes, though she tried to keep her composure. So you're saying our marriage is over? Because I wanted to try something different? Elliot took a step closer to her, his hands trembling slightly. No, Claire. It's not just because of that. It's because over the past week, I've realized we've been moving in opposite directions for a long time. I tried to find a way to bring us closer, but, what you're asking for now, shows me we're disconnected in a way that might not be fixable. It's not about a promise, it's about how you reacted to all of this. Claire couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Elliot, please, don't do this. I know we can work things out. I know I made the wrong choices, but I don't want to lose you. He looked at her for a long moment, feeling the weight of each word. I didn't want to lose you either, Claire. But I think we lost each other a long time ago. And forcing something that isn't there anymore, it'll just hurt us more. He stepped away, picking up his keys from the counter and heading for the door. Before leaving, he turned back to look at her one last time. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. But I can't be part of this. With that, he left, leaving Claire alone in the living room, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the empty space where Elliot had just been. Elliot stayed seated in the armchair, looking at Claire with an expression that blended sadness and fatigue. He knew he had to leave. Staying there in that moment would only drag out the pain and the feeling that they were stuck in a cycle with no end. Everything had been said, feelings out in the open. There was nothing left to argue or explain. Slowly, he got up, avoiding eye contact, and walked to the door. Claire watched him, silent, feeling as though the ground was crumbling beneath her. "You're leaving?" she asked in a weak voice, almost a whisper. Elliot paused for a moment, hand already on the doorknob, and replied without turning around. "I need space, Claire. I need to think." "I believe you do too." She wanted to say something, to beg him to stay, but she knew that wouldn't change anything. He hadn't spoken with anger, but with a firmness she'd never heard before. Somehow, that hurt more than any fight could. When the door closed behind Elliot, Claire remained on the couch, unmoving. The sound of the door echoed through the house, filling the emptiness he left behind. Time seemed to slow down, and reality sank in. They weren't just fighting, they were losing each other. Or maybe they had lost each other long ago. Over the following weeks, Elliot kept his distance. He rented a small apartment, a temporary place where he could sort things out. For the first few days, he barely slept or ate, his mind replaying their years together, from the happiest moments to the recent tension. He wondered if he could have done anything differently, or if he'd missed obvious signs that now seemed all too clear. Claire, on the other hand, went through a whirlwind of emotions. First came the overwhelming sadness, then guilt. She replayed every word, every choice she'd made, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. She wanted to call Elliot but was afraid he wouldn't answer or, worse, that he'd tell her there was nothing left to do. So she waited, hoping he'd give her some sign there was still a chance. But that sign never came. About a month later, the divorce papers arrived. It wasn't a shock, she knew it was just a matter of time. Even so, holding those documents in her hands was like feeling the full weight of the end. There was no note, no message from Elliot, just the paperwork. It felt cold, but Claire knew it wasn't out of cruelty. It was just a reflection of how they'd come to this point, exhausted, empty, with no more strength to fight. Elliot signed the papers a few days later. He looked at the lines that officially ended 7 years of marriage and paused for a moment. Not because he doubted his decision, but because he knew that signing them closed a very important chapter of his life. With a steady hand, he signed, then carefully folded the papers and handed them to the lawyer. As he left the office, Elliot felt a mix of relief and sadness. It was the end of a journey that began with so much love and hope, but in the end, proved that sometimes people grow in different directions. He didn't blame Claire, or even himself. He just accepted that, for both of them, it was time to move on. That same night, when Claire got confirmation of the divorce, tears fell again. It wasn't the desperate sobbing of the early days, but a calmer sadness, as if she'd finally accepted that loving someone isn't always enough to keep them by your side. She placed the papers in a drawer, not to forget but as a reminder that life's hardest lessons often come from the chapters we have to close. So, moving along separate paths, Elliot and Claire began to rebuild their lives. The end of the marriage wasn't a failure, but rather the inevitable conclusion to a story that, while beautiful, no longer made sense to continue. They would carry with them the memories, the lessons, and the marks of those years together as they each searched, in their own way, for the happiness they once believed they'd found in each other. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.